Hey guys, my name is Jonathan Reed Walden. Today I'll be giving a speech on why the patient-to-nurse ratio should never exceed 2 to 1 in an intensive care unit. I'm going to first start off by painting the picture. Imagine going to visit your loved one in an intensive care unit and you see them laying in the bed, they're not bathed, then you discover they have a pressure sore, they just look very unkept. And by the way, a pressure sore is a preventable injury. So you ask the nurse, why is my loved one looking so rough? Why are they not being cared for? And their answer is, sorry, we're really busy and we're understaffed. Imagine the frustration and anger that would bring upon you, and that's just something we need to avoid. And I will tell you, I've experienced this, and I've experienced this from a nursing perspective. I've been so busy where I cannot provide adequate care for my patients. And typically this is in instances where the patient to staff ratio exceeds 2 to 1. And this can be a dangerous issue. And this is not just the issue that I experience, it's the issue experienced by healthcare providers across the country in intensive care units. This is a major issue. The topics of conversation today, I will discuss the importance of not exceeding a 2 to 1 patient-to-nurse ratio in an ICU for 3 different reasons. First reason being to improve patient care, the second reason being financial profits, and the third being enhanced nurse retention rates. Patient-to-nurse ratio of 2 to 1 optimizes patient care. A study by Halm, which is a study I'll refer to multiple times throughout this speech, in the American Journal of Critical Care explains how appropriate staffing in the ICU setting significantly improves patient outcomes. When I discuss patient outcomes, I want to be clear that I'm discussing outcomes such as mortality rates, patient falls, urinary tract infections, and pressure ulcers. Magan, Kucharski, and Collier published a study in the Australian Critical Care Journal in 2012, and they mentioned a statistical association between increased nurse staffing levels and decreased adverse patient outcomes. So basically saying bad things are prevented when you have appropriate staff, particularly when your nurse to patient ratio is 2 to 1. Now that I've talked about how nurse to patient ratio of a 2 to 1 will enhance patient outcomes, I'll discuss how a patient to nurse ratio of 2 to 1 maximizes profits. Referring back to Halm here, in his publication in the American Journal of Critical Care, he explains that insufficient nursing ratios leads to various costly patient adverse events. Adverse events that we consider preventable, such as bed sores or falls. So you might be thinking, how does a bed sore cost the hospital money? Well, if a patient develops a bed sore on their 25th day of a long, lengthy, expensive stay, the insurance will then refuse to pay the entire bill. It might be surprising, but that's where healthcare is going now. Also, if a patient falls out of bed and we are required to do a CT scan, well, a CT scan costs $3,000 to $5,000. But if you have enough nursing staff to say turn that patient so they don't develop a bed sore, or they have enough nursing staff to attend to those call lights before the patient climbs out of bed and hits their head, we can prevent all these erroneous charges. To further support my claim, Rothberg, Abraham, and Lindecker and Rose wrote an article in 2015 titled Improving Nurse-to-Patient Ratios as a Cost-Effective Safety Intervention. What that study found was appropriate staffing led to a reduction in length of stay, reduction of falls, reduction of urinary tract infections, and a reduction of bed sores. These are huge things that all hospitals look at. And by simply hiring a few more nurses, if we can prevent those, it's a no-brainer. We need to keep our nurse ratio 2 to 1. Another thing is pay for performance. This is this new ideal that insurance companies are adhering to, basically saying if your patients develop these adverse events that we consider preventable, such as falls, bed sores, urinary tract infections, all these things, then we're not going to pay the hospital bill or reduce the amount that we pay. Therefore, if you want to get maximized reimbursement, then you need to have enough nurses so you have good patient outcomes. Now that we've talked about how nurse ratios can affect profit, we're going to talk about how appropriate staff to nurse or nurse to patient ratios increase nurse retention rates. A study published by Halm in the American Journal of Critical Care explains that high patient to nurse ratios leads to higher rates of nursing turnover. Unsafe patient loads leads to nurse stress and dissatisfaction within their workplace. So if a nurse walks into an intensive care unit, has 4 extremely sick patients, they're not going to feel like they can adequately provide care for these patients. They're going to feel stressed, they're going to feel overwhelmed, and they might even be scared they'll lose their license because of neglect or malpractice. Therefore, they're not going to want to work there. They're going to leave the job and go find somewhere else with better working conditions. Cottingham, Mary DiBartolo Borstini, and Tina Brown published a work titled Partners in Nursing and Mentoring Initiative to Enhance Nurse Retention in 2017. Their study showed the strong correlation between nurse-to-patient ratios and nurse retention rates. They also hit on the cost of training new nurses. Not only when you lose a nurse do you lose experience, you also have extremely high cost of training new nurses. Therefore, it's better just to hire an extra nurse and keep all your nurses from leaving. In conclusion, the patient-to-nurse ratio of 2 to 1 in the ICU is extremely important and should never exceed a ratio of 2 to 1. The initiation of a 2 to 1 ratio has been proven to enhance patient outcomes, maximize profits, and increase nurse retention rates. These are 3 very important things in today's healthcare. Not adhering to appropriate ratios will result in injuries to patients, the loss of money, and the loss of skilled nurses. These are all things that we do not want to do, and they're very costly to healthcare organizations. Here are my references, and I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. I hope you guys have a nice day. Thank you.